Mental Jam is a research project that explores how methods of video game co-creation can facilitate the participation of individuals with lived experiences of depression and anxiety to build empathy and mental health awareness among young people. We report the results from our pilot study, which comprised of narrative interviews, a game jam workshop, through which a game called Counterattack Therapy was produced. Mental health is a vital part of our health and well-being. Mental health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being where someone can recognize their abilities, handle normal life stress, work productively, and contribute to their community. In 2015, the United Nations actually included the promotion of mental health and well-being for the first time in their Sustainable Development Goals. According to WHO, it is very important for you to engage and empower people with lived experience of mental illness by closely collaborating with them in the promotion of mental health advocacy. And one of the ways to promote mental health is through the knowledge translation of lived experiences through different artistic mediums. Knowledge translation is the term used to describe how knowledge is disseminated, exchanged, and applied from a range of participants and perspectives. For example, people have portrayed their first episode of psychosis through dance, and they have also used drawings and digital media to express experiences of illness. While Mental Jam is a research project that explores how knowledge translation of young people's lived experiences of depression and anxiety through video games co-creation. Video games are interactive and immersive, and it makes it a powerful medium for representing the lived experiences, and it can inspire players to gain a more insightful understanding. Video game development is also multidisciplinary, which provides multiple ways for people with lived experiences to tell their stories, such as through the narrative, the art, the music, and the game mechanics. In recent years, there has been an emergence of deeply personal video games about game developers' personal experiences of mental illness. The existing games, however, are often developed in isolation by solo or small teams of game developers, which implies that they need to have all the skills required, including design, programming, and art. So in developing Mental Jam, we take a different approach that encourages young people with lived experiences of depression and anxiety to work closely together with game developers to co-create video games. The people with lived experience are involved in the research from the very beginning and throughout the entire process, and they also guide the research process and ensure that their lived experiences are represented in every step of the research. We also use participatory action research methodology to facilitate the collaborative process, whereby different stakeholders work together through an iterative process of reflection and action to solve a problem, and the process itself is just as important as the outcome. Participatory action research is a user-centered approach where participants are the real experts of their experience, and they are involved in every step of the research process, from design to data gathering, analysis, and conclusion, which also gives them a sense of empowerment. We also use game jams, which is an event where game developers can work alone or in teams with a balance of skills and interests to make a game based on a given theme in a short duration, which ranges from 48 hours to slow jams that last about a month. Some of these events have been conducted in physical locations, such as Global Game Jam, while some are conducted online, such as the Ludum Dare. Game jams also promote community building through a shared experience of being in the same location and a mutual interest in game development. Game jams have also been compared to performative artworks, where video games are co-created through group participation, and the development process is just as important as the games produced. And game jam participants are also empowered by the shared ownership of developing a game from start to finish. This is the methods for mental jams. So prior to the game jam workshops, we also conduct one-on-one semi-structured narrative interviews with young people with lived experiences of depression and anxiety. The participants are given an opportunity to give an uninterrupted account of their experience. We conducted these interviews because participants may not feel comfortable sharing their lived experiences with the group during the game jam workshops. The interview transcripts were de-identified and the participants were given a pseudonym to protect their anonymity. The interviews were also thematically analyzed and to identify reoccurring themes. And a report of the findings was also presented at the start of the game jam workshops, and that informed the game's design. For the pilot study, we recruited 4 participants through personal networks and snowballing. So eligible participants were self-identified or report receiving a diagnosis of lived experience of depression and anxiety. And they must be currently, by their own account, sufficiently well to participate in research. Due to the current pandemic situation, all of the interviews and game jam workshops were conducted online, which allowed participants who are based in different countries, such as Australia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. The next step is the game jam workshops. From the 4 participants who participated in the interviews, 2 of the interview participants, who were both based in Vietnam, were recruited for the pilot game jam workshops. The other 2 participants will be recruited for another game jam iteration. So the participants for the game jam workshops are Helen, who is a graduate living in Hanoi, and Melissa, who is a student studying in Ho Chi Minh. So due to the participants' availability, the game jam workshops were held online by over multiple sessions that lasted between 30 minutes to 2 hours over 3 weekends. And these sessions were also video recorded with the participants' consent. The participants were led in a discussion about the thematic analysis report, and it's followed by a brainstorming session about the game that they will develop. So the brainstorming session was held on a Trello board where participants could add cards, so they're like post-it notes, to different lists, which were labeled game mechanics, narrative, art style, and other ideas. So Trello allowed the participants to attach images, links, and comments to cards, as well as references to art styles. So the ideation session for the game jam workshop, it followed IDEO's design thinking and their field guide that included a step-by-step instruction for ideation activities such as brainstorming and storyboarding. So the brainstorming sessions occurred in 3-minute bursts where participants were invited to add as many ideas as possible to the Trello board. The participants were also encouraged to draw from their personal lived experiences, thematic analysis report, and build on each other's ideas. And after each burst, we had a brief discussion, which was about the ideas that we were added, and some bursts focused on a particular aspect, such as the narrative and building the main character of the game. So these sessions lasted 2 hours, and at the end of it, we had a clearer idea of the mechanics and narrative and art style for the game. The Trello board was also set up to track the different tasks that we accomplished in a to-do, doing, and done list. And Trello can also add checklists and assign different participants to cards. So the researcher assigned the task for the group. So the participants will be in charge of the game design and narrative, while the researcher would oversee the art and code for the game. The game was developed using Unity, which is a free and popular game engine for game development, as well as Yarn Spinner, which is a plugin for writing game dialogue. And during some of the sessions, the participants and the researchers would present their work in progress, and we'll have a discussion and then also give feedback. And at the end of it, we created a game called Counterattack Therapy. So it's a game that was developed over 3 weeks with participants of lived experiences with depression and anxiety. And it's an interactive game about Alex, who is a humanoid cat in their mid-20s. And as a friend, the player will listen to Alex's story and also guide them through a battle, and then also gather useful resources to help them take care of their mental health. So the narrative and design of the game was based on 4 main themes that were identified from the interviews, which is the views about the causes of depression and anxiety, experiencing depression and anxiety, and support and challenges, and recovery. Interview participants identified different reasons for the cause of their depression and anxiety, which includes isolation and traumatic events such as bullying and sexual assault, and an incident at a workplace. For one of the participants at the workshop, Helen, her depression started after an incident at the workplace and followed by a motorbike accident. So based on her lived experience, the main character of the game, Alex, also encountered some trouble at work, which caused their depression and anxiety. And during the game, Alex also encounters a motorbike accident and ends up with a cast on their arm. For experiencing depression and anxiety, some participants avoided people, they spent a lot of time sleeping and crying, and some of them also considered self-harm. Prior research in co-design and participatory design also found that participants with psychosis and dementia, they found that the use of a relatable fictional character allows their participants to share their lived experience in an indirect way. So similarly, for this research, during the ideation session, the participants actually talk more about their personal experiences and they're quite open about sharing these experiences and incorporating some of the physical aspects of themselves into the character. For example, one of our other participants, Melissa, she described how when she was depressed, her hair got so matted that her mother had to cut it all off. And this was translated into the messy fur Alex has in the game. And halfway through the game, after Alex got into the accident and got a bit more depressed, their fur actually turns into a darker shade of purple, and the fur also got a bit messier. And some information that the participants didn't share during their interviews was also revealed during the ideation session, such as beer bottles and cigarettes that the participants added to Alex's room. It was only during the game jam workshop that one of the participants revealed that during her depressive episode, she actually used to drink and smoke a lot as a coping strategy. Some of the participants also faced stigma and discrimination. So during the Game Jam workshop, Melissa shared her experiences facing discrimination from her ex-boyfriend and his friends while she was living in Australia, while Helen also shared similar views in Vietnam. In the game, the player Alex's friend offers advice, and the game presents choices of dialogue that the player can tell Alex. So the player can suggest Alex to see a mental health professional, but Alex was initially quite resistant, as portrayed in one of the dialogues of the game. Eventually, Alex was able to see a mental health professional, and actually all of the interview participants were also seeing a mental health professional, such as a counselor or a therapist, through their university or workplace. And some participants were accessing these services during COVID. So they talked about how they were doing it using a video call, which is why Alex is also having his counseling session through a video call. And participants also talked about the lack of access of mental health support in Vietnam, while another noted the cost of services in the Philippines. And Melissa also talked about the culture shock that she got moving back from Vietnam to Australia. Participants also mentioned different coping strategies that were suggested by mental health professionals, such as breathing and meditation, gratitude journals, and painting. So for the game, we included a breathing exercise as a mini game. And at the end of the Game Jam workshops, we released the game, and I also conducted a interview at the conclusion to ask the participants for their feedback about the facilitation of the Game Jams and the game development process. And we also asked what can be improved about the process. One of the things that we've learned is that the benefits of working in groups, the participants do not need to have all the skills required to make a game. And there's also a sense of belonging. And one of the participants, she said that collaborating online, she found it very useful during the pandemic because even though we were in different places, we had this shared sense of belonging. And they also found it quite useful to use Trello. And also, even though they did not have any background in game development before, they found the Game Jam workshops to be very rewarding because they learned new skills and developed the game for the first time. And prior research also found that making games is entertaining even for newcomers. The participants also found a venue for them to share and reflect about their lived experiences, and the use of a relatable fictional character, it allows them to share their experiences in an indirect way. The positive and promising feedback from the participants of the Game Jam show that Game Jam workshops can be a viable method to develop video games about the lived experiences of depression and anxiety. And that concludes my talk. Thank you for listening.